number 9, same thing. First thing that we're going to mark is our midline. It looks like it's going to be at -3, as you can see. So that's the last number that's going to go into our function every single time. The second thing that we're going to do is our amplitude. Remember, 1 midline. I think I wrote this on every slide. And the second thing is your amplitude. It looks like it's going up or down 1 from my midline, so it's just 1. My amplitude is 1. And then I know that this thing is a sine function because it told us so. And I know this one is cosine function because it told us so. Good. My third step is to find our period. Remember, P equals 2 pi over B. That's my A. My B goes inside, in between sine and the X that we're going to have. Okay, so remember, if it makes 2 humps, it makes a full period. So that's hump number 1, and this is hump number 2. So wherever the second hump ends, which is right here, that's my period. So my period is 3 pi. That's my period. So I'm going to take that, okay, and let's actually plug it into our formula. So it's P, which is 3 pi. Is that 3 pi? Let's check it. 3 pi equals 2 pi over B. All right. Now we're going to cross multiply by putting 1 under any number that we have, okay? To cross it, so we get 2 times 2 pi times 1, which is 2 pi, equal 3 pi times B, which is 3 pi B, because none of them are like terms. To solve for B, we're going to divide both sides by 3 pi. So they cancel out. So B, pi's cancel out, equal 2 over 3. So we're going to put 2 over 3 for our B on both of those. Okay. Now once we got done, once again, we're going to take a look at this function. When I just take a look at this function, on my y-axis, it starts on my midline, which indicates that it's going to be a sine function. So I know on my sine function, I'm not going to move it left or right any, so I'm going to just put an X there, and then I'm basically done. I'm going to check one more thing. I know it starts on my midline. However, it's going down. It's going downward as soon as it starts, so it's going to be a negative sine function. You see, I'm always checking my signs. Okay. Now, cosine function needs to start at the highest point or the lowest point. It doesn't matter which one you pick, as long as you just do it right. I'm going to pick the closest one, which is at the lowest point, which means I know I should have started at the lowest point here. However, I moved it to the right. How much is that? Let's take a look. I should have given you that value. Right, 3 over 4 pi. So I'm going to indicate that here. I'm going to say X minus for right, 3 over 4 pi. And then since I started down low, not at high, that one's going to be a negative. Okay, let's keep going. On this one, likewise, the first thing that we're going to do is our midline, which is at 1. We can see that. And that's the last number that's going to be on our function. The second thing that we're going to do is our amplitude. Remember, amplitude starts from the midline to the highest point, or how far up it goes, or how far down it goes. It doesn't matter. Just pick one and do it. So it goes up 1, so my amplitude is 1 for both of these. And we know the part C is going to be sine function because they tell us so. And part D is going to be cosine function because they tell us so. The third thing that we're going to go through is period. So P equals 2 pi over B. Now let's take a look. I'm going to start on my y-axis. So that's half the hump. That's 1 hump. So I have 1.5 humps. So I need half more. So I need this much more. So my period ends here. And what number really is that? It's half of 1, so it's really 1 over 2. Good? So my period is 1 over 2, which is equal to pi over b. Now, conveniently, the period was already in fractions, so we don't have to put 1 under it or anything like that. So we're just going to cross multiply. So 2 times 2 pi is 4 pi, equal 1b, which is just b. Well, these are 4 pi. There we go. 4 pi, that's our b. Remember, a goes up front, and b goes in between sign and the letter, okay? Now, once we're done with these 3 steps, so first midline, second amplitude, third period. The next thing we're going to do is to just look at it and see what kind of function it is. So look at your y-axis. Instead of starting at my midpoint, it starts at my lowest point, so I know it's going to be a cosine function. Not only do we know that, it's going to be a negative cosine function because it starts on the bottom, not at the top. And since it is a cosine function, we don't move that because it is already itself. So that's it. It is already itself. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's good enough. All right. The next, to write the sine function, that we know it needs to start on the midline. So we know it's supposed to start here on our midline where I'm drawing this mess. However, the closest one is we moved it to the right this much. How much is that? Let's take a look. That's about 1/4 of a half, so it's going to be 1/8. I'm not going to give you problems like this on the test. If I do, I'm going to give you what that is. You're going to move right 1/8. Let me say it again. If I were to give this to you on the test, I am going to go ahead and tell you what that value is, so that way you'll know instead of you having to figure it out, okay? It's going to be x and then right 1/8. And let's check it. We start here, and then we're going to move upwards, so it's going to be positive sign. One last problem, okay? Please pause this, see if you can do this on your own if you weren't good at it, and check it later. My midline is a -2. My amplitude, how high it goes or how low it goes from the midline, is 2. I know this is a sine function, and I know this is cosine function. Okay? And midline, amplitude, third thing is period. Remember, how many humps do we need? 2 humps. So there's hump number 1, there's hump number 2. Hump number 2 ends at pi/3. So our formula was P equal 2 pi/b. My period that we found was pi/3, which is equal to pi/b. Once again, conveniently, your period is a fraction, so I'm just going to cross multiply. So 3 times 2 pi gives us 6 pi, which is equivalent to pi times b, which is pi/b. I'm trying to isolate b, so I'm going to divide both sides by pi. So that gives us 6 equal b. So my b, which that's my a, the second one is my b, is 6. Okay? Once again, once we get those 3 things done, midline, amplitude, and your period formula of some sort, okay, then we're going to look at this function and write it. Or if you were to graph it, you're going to look at the equation and graph it. So let's take a look. This looks like a sine function to me because it starts on my midline on my y-axis. So I'm going to write my sine function. Since it is a sine function, I'm not going to move it, so I'm going to put an x there, and I'm not going to say it's going to move left or right any. Okay? And since I start on the midline and I start by going upward, it's going to be a positive 2 sine, so I am done with the sine function. Now I know my cosine has to start either on the highest point or the lowest point. So I'm going to find the nearest one where it's the highest or the lowest. So I see that this one is the nearest one. Once I get it on your test, I'm going to give that point to you. So that's pi/12, by the way. On your test, I'm going to give that to you. So I should have started here on the highest point. However, I moved it to the right pi/12. So I'm going to indicate that. So x minus pi/12, indicating I moved to the right pi/12. Okay? And since it started on the top, it'll be a positive cosine function.